At a recent meeting in my local RC club, the topic of 3D printing came up. Now, there's really no limit to what you can do with CAD and 3D printing, and the growing availability of fully printed models demonstrates this. But there is a steep learning curve to get to the point where you're designing an entirely flyable model from scratch. Now, that being said, you don't have to be a pro with CAD to design parts for your models. And this video is going to be a really beginner-friendly walkthrough of designing an instrument panel for your scale model. Instrument panels are a really great place for beginners to start. They're generally flat, they have lots of symmetrical gauges, and in general, they don't have complex shapes or curves. This video is also going to be just a little bit different than most of the other videos on this channel. I've tried to keep my recent videos short and to the point, but this video is going to be a bit longer, and it's aimed at the guys in our club and other modelers like them who've never used Fusion 360 before and who want to get started with something simple that they can actually use in their model. If you're looking to really dig into all the bells and whistles, everything you can do with Fusion 360, there's loads of great resources out there. In particular, a guy named Lars Christensen. If you want to be a pro, go over to his channel. Otherwise, let's knock out an instrument panel. Okay, so the first thing I want to do before I start modeling is run out to the internet and grab a picture of an instrument panel. So I'm going to look for something, a model a lot of us might have. How about a Super Cub? Super Cub instrument panel. There we go. And we'll look at some images, and without going too far, that doesn't look half bad. So let's pull this one down. I'm just going to save this image as, and I'm going to call it panel 5. That's the name of the file. And all right, so I've got the instrument panel that I'm going to recreate. Come back in here into Fusion 360. If you haven't played with Fusion 360, there is a little bit of a learning curve, even just on how to move around. You need to kind of just get in here and play with it. And it's something to remember is this little cube that's up in this top corner. You can click on the cube and it will help you move around your object. Right now it's a little tough because I don't have an object to move around, but I like to start by looking at the top just like this. So my object is right side up and I'm looking straight down on it. The next thing I need to do is kind of determine how large I want this to be. So let's say I'm building a pretty big Super Cub model. My instrument panel needs to be about 6 inches across. That's about 150 millimeters. I'm going to sketch a line here. And now you can always click where it says sketch and come down and select what it is that you want to sketch. There are some quick hotkeys though. In this case, all I have to do is press the letter L and I am sketching a line. So I want to sketch it on one of these planes here. Now you see it's kind of showing me the orientation. When I'm looking from the top, I want to sketch on this plane here. And I'm going to sketch a line that is about 150 millimeters long. Now you can see it's already, that makes it real easy. It snaps right to it. 150 millimeters. Okay, so what I want to do next is actually insert, and I'm going to do an attached canvas. So what I want to do, put it on that same plane here, and I'm going to select an image, and I'm going to grab panel 5, the image we pulled from the internet. Now you see it's here in the center, and it is not lined up right, and it's awfully small. So what I want to do, and the more you play with Fusion, the more you'll get comfortable with this, I'm just going to grab this wheel, and I'm going to drag this so that I'm 90 degrees to it, and then since I'm placing the image, I can click here, and I can scale up and down, and I can use this little box to move the image wherever I want. So I think you can probably see what I'm about to do. I want to size this panel so that it is about 150 millimeters across. Scale it up, move it here, and I'm just going to keep tweaking until I have my panel about 150 millimeters across. Give me just good enough. All right, press enter. My sketch is set. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to click this line that I drew, and I'm just going to get rid of it. We already know the size of our image here. So first thing I'm going to do here, there's a couple different ways we could do this panel. Now I could actually just trace the entire panel out and then create each one of these individual gauges. But this panel is actually really quite symmetrical. So what I want to do, I'm going to sketch a line, and I'm going to start from about here, one of these corners, and I'm going to take it all the way over to this corner, and this is the bottom line for my panel. Now you notice it put a little marker right here in the center. So each half of it is 63.787 millimeters. Okay, I'm going to sketch another line from here, from that center point, all the way up and get right on that top surface there. Okay, so what I want to do next, I'm just going to start by creating one half of this panel, and then I'm just going to create a mirror image of it to save myself time and effort and make sure everything is a mirror. So what I want to do, I'm going to sketch a couple of little lines here. We're going to ignore the curves on this surface for now, and I'm just going to sketch a couple of lines to kind of capture this. Obviously, if you're trying to win Top Gun, you will be much more precise than I'm being right now, but for a free instrument panel, it's not half bad. That'll do. Now, the next line that we need to trace is this one, this curve. Now, there's a few different ways you can do this. There's not necessarily a right or wrong way. Sketch has the option to do an arc. Now, you'll notice this 3-point arc would look to be the right tool, but if I try to do a 3-point arc between, actually that did not work at all. If I try to do a 3-point arc between these 2 points, you'll notice I'm not going to be able to accurately capture the curve. So what I'd like to do for this type of curve is what's called a conic curve. So I'm going to select conic curve. I'm going to hit my points that I want to use. I want to use this point and the point at the top. And now what I want to do is zoom out just a little bit. I am going to try to get it as close as I can with the conic curve, and right about here looks good. Now when I click, it's going to give me this option to pull in here, and that looks really pretty good right there. So now you see I've closed my part. I can actually highlight and select this entire surface. What I'm going to do before I do that is I am going to come up where it says sketch, and I'm going to go to mirror. So what I want to do is basically create the base plate for this instrument panel first. So that I want to select the objects I want to mirror. And in this case, I want to mirror, holding control, I'm going to select each of these lines that I've just drawn, except for the center line. That's going to be my mirror line. So I'll come back over to the mirror tool, I'll select the mirror line, and I will click this line. And you'll see it has just lightly drawn in the rest of my line. And it's close enough for me. I'm happy enough with the way it looks. I'm just going to go ahead and hit enter. And now I have 2 selectable sections. I'm going to select both of them by holding control and clicking both of them. Right click and choose extrude. Now extrude is going to let me add some thickness to my part. You'll see if I look at it from the side, I actually have a little arrow and I can pull and make this as thick as I like. The other nice thing though is I can actually come over here where it says distance and tell it exactly how thick I want it to be. So in this case, I'm going to make this 2.5 millimeters, I'm sorry, 2.5, make sure I'm not adding decimals, I do that quite a bit, 2.5 millimeters thick. And I'm going to hit enter, and here we go, I have a 2.5 millimeter thick panel, the base for my panel. Alright, so what I'm going to do next is create some of these gauges that are mirror images of each other. I'm going to start doing that by giving myself a reference line in the center of this panel. Now you'll see it already kind of has a, let me go ahead and do this. I'm going to sketch a line the length of the base here, and that creates my center point. So now if I create another line from here straight up to the top surface, and you can always tell that you're straight because you'll see I'm at 90 degrees. That looks pretty good right there. So this line that I've just sketched is going to become my mirror line when I go to mirror the image. Next thing I want to do is sketch out and trace some of these instruments. So you can do circles a few different ways. If you just hit the letter C, you'll be doing a center diameter circle. And let me stop this sketch. And if I just hit the letter C, I'm going to be doing a center diameter circle. I find that it's actually a little bit easier with instrument panels to do what's called a 2-point circle. So I'm going to come in here, sketch, do circle, 2-point circle, and then what I'm going to do is just zoom in on my image, pick a point here on the gauge that I want to copy, right on the edge, and then just zoom out and adjust until I'm happy that I've got the instrument just right. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect, but they do need to be the same or else your eye will notice it. So I like to select my circle. I'm going to do a Control C and Control V, the universal copy. And what I can do now is I have some options for moving my newly pasted image. So what's nice is I can use these little arrows, and it basically, when I use the up and down arrow, it locks it in so it can't move side to side. Similarly, when I move the side to side arrow, it can't move up and down. So I basically can use those to keep things perfectly aligned and move my image to where I want it to be. I can zoom in a little bit and then I get a little bit more granularity, or I can actually come over here where it says the distance that we've moved, and I can tell it exactly how far I want it to move. 5.5 millimeters looks pretty darn good, so I'm going to just leave that there. Now if I Control V again and paste another one, well, this one's not exactly straight to the side or straight down. I can actually just grab this little box and drag this wherever I want it to go. It's a little bit less precise, but it works quite nicely. And I will do that. Let's look at our side panels here. So these three are mirror images of these three. This one is not a mirror image, it's a little bit off here, and this gauge does not exist on this side. So really, these three are the only ones that get mirrored over here. Except for these. I don't know if they're little buttons, indicator lights, what they are, but we're going to create them. So, like I said, I like to do that circle and center diameter, circle and 2-point circle. And I'm going to create that on this, here, escape. Every once in a while you got to kind of reset, stop the sketch, start a new sketch. I get ahead of myself sometimes and screw things up, and that's what happened here. So 2-point circle, that's about right. We're not trying to win Top Gun. Control C, Control V, and I can just drag this right over, and it looks to me like maybe -4, I didn't mean to do that, that's 54, -4.5 maybe? -4.9? -4.8. I like that, -4.8. So, that looks pretty good. What I can do, I want to keep the spacing on these consistent, so I can either just copy this one, Control V, and move it -4.8, 4.8, and that will put it exactly spaced the same. Or what I can actually do is select two of them. I can do a Control C, hold on, escape, Control C, Control V. Now I'm moving both of them, and let's see, 4.8 would be 9.6 minus 9.6, and that you notice I'm starting to come a little bit off of the design, but that doesn't really matter to me that much. Like I said, we're not trying to win Top Gun. -4.6, 4.6, good enough. Okay, so now what I want to do is I am going to select all of these images that are these circles that I've just created. by holding Control and clicking all of them. Actually, getting ahead of myself here. I want to go to Sketch. I want to go to Mirror. Now I need to select them. Getting ahead of myself. Okay, so I've selected my objects, 9 objects to mirror. I'm going to click here to select my mirror line, and here it is. You'll notice it has just sketched these on the opposite side. I'm happy enough with where they're at. There they go. So what I'm going to do next is we're going to create these 3 circles over here and these 5 circles over here. We're going to do that basically the same way we've done the rest of them with the 2-point circles. Okay, so I've got all of these gauges, all the circles and knobs, whatever these little buttons were down here, I've got them all selected. Actually, you know what? I have missed one. Let's get this one here. Okay, so I've got all my circles drawn in here. Whatever these little buttons are, this knob here. So I've got all these drawn in. What I'm going to do next, what I usually like to do is just select all of them by holding Control. And you can do these in different batches. There's no reason you have to do all of them at once, but because these are all pretty uniform, I'm just going to go ahead and knock it all out at once. And what I'm going to do is right click and extrude just like we did the backing, and I'm just going to make all of these 0.5 millimeters tall. So you notice when we look at this, now they all stand out about 0.5 millimeters. So I don't actually want my gauge faces to stick out. I actually want them recessed, but the reason I did all of them the same way is now I can actually select these top face plates separately, and I can work on them however I want. So for this particular one, this is a knob. I actually want it a little bit taller. So I'm going to extrude this a little bit taller. I don't know exactly how tall I want it, but oh, hold on. I don't mean to have everything selected. I just wanted you. And I'm going to extrude, and we are going to bring you up. Let's make you 2 millimeters tall. There we go. Now, let's go through and select all of my gauges. And I don't know if you aren't, those two are not gauges. So have all my gauges selected. I'm going to right click. I'm going to extrude, and I'm going to extrude them in the other direction, and I'm going to take them down a minus, does -2 go all the way through? No, a -2 does not go all the way through. We're going to go -2. Okay, so now we're down 2 millimeters. You can see we have a nice little cup for each of these instruments, and we could actually cut out a little piece of plastic to put on top of our printed panel or our printed instrument face, and that will look really nice. I'm going to take these 2 little buttons over here. Don't know what they were, but we're going to treat them like they're knobs, and I'm going to extrude them just a little bit taller. And yeah, why not? 1 more millimeter tall. And okay, another little trick we're going to do here is we are going to treat these little lights, or these little things, as though they are lights. I'm going to select them, right click, and then choose fillet. And I'm going to, this allows you to actually round this corner by whatever diameter you put in here. So I'm going to round it by 1. And you'll see now they have this little rounded look to them, almost like they're a little light. That doesn't look too bad. Okay, so I'm happy with these portions of the instrument panel. Now all that's left to do is create this little screen section that's here in the center. So what I'm going to start by doing is I'm going to sketch a rectangle. Again, you can do this a few different ways. You can use the hotkey and hit R, or you can go up to sketch and choose rectangle. And I'm going to grab just the outside corners of this panel here, and this appears to be a touch screen or something like that. We're going to kind of move in a little closer. There we go. That will do. Okay, what I'm going to do now is select this. I'm going to extrude this, and I'm going to make this, let's make this 2 millimeters tall, because I'm going to do something else around it. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to sketch a line on this surface, and I'm going to sketch from here straight down to here, and you'll notice where I can set my degrees. I want 90 degrees. There we go. And I'm going to do another line from here all the way up to the top, and again make sure 90 degrees. All right, so now you can see we can select this little section. What I want to do is I'm going to extrude this up by about 1 millimeter. So there we go. We have this little faceplate on top. What I'm going to do next is actually give you the same option to put a little piece of plastic over the screen. So what we want to do is create a recess in this surface, and we're going to take it from about here down to the other end of this. You can be as precise as you want. I don't want to be too precise right now, or don't need to be. We'll just take this down a little bit. Take this down minus 1.5 millimeters. Should be plenty deep enough. All right, so now we have our little screen here. I'm happy with how everything looks here. All I need to do is sketch these little buttons. So let's start. Make sure I'm looking at the top here. I'm going to sketch a rectangle, and I'm going to sketch it on this section here. And we're going to just create a button like this, and I'm going to select it, all 4 sides, Control C, Control V. Now I should be able to just drag you over. Again, not trying to win any awards. Control C, Control V. I'm going to sketch this rectangle up here, and we're going to sketch this circle with a 2-point circle right about here. And now we're just going to select all of you. Right click, extrude. Let's take these all up about 1 mil. Actually, let's make it 0.75 mil. That should be plenty. And there you go. All right, so let's take a look at our instrument panel now. We really haven't spent that much time on it. We haven't obsessed about getting every little bit and piece just right. Something you can do really easily to see how things are looking is you can actually turn off features of the design. This little light bulb next to where it says canvases, this will kill that image that's below it. So now I can look at my panel with just the actual panel without that image below it, that really does not look too bad. So at this point, I would be ready to go ahead and hit make. I should be able to go ahead and just send this to my 3D printer. I'm going to do a 3D print. I'm going to select my part, and actually let me zoom out and select my part. I usually do not send to a 3D print utility. I usually go ahead and use this tool to go create an STL file. You'll see here it's giving me the option to save this body1.stl. We're going to call this Super Cub Panel 1, and we're going to save that STL file. Now if you were going to send wanted somebody to 3D print this for you, this STL file is what you would send them. They would then pull this into their slicer application, get it ready for their printer, and send it to the printer. If you have your own printer or have access to one, you're going to pull it into your own slicer application. We'll cover that some other time. All right, so I've created this little dummy panel here, just a square, nothing special about it, but what I want to show you is how to add a little bit more detail to your panel. So if your model is large enough, you might actually want to be able to see the little screws that retain the instruments. So what you can do, similarly to how we copied and dragged these circles around, you can actually drag the instrument and the little screws around. So what I would like to do for something like that, normally I will create a square around my instrument. So let's make this 16 by 16. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a center point, and I am going to, actually let me do a 2-point circle, 2-point circle, and I'm just going to pick a point here, pick a point here. All right, so here's my gauge. Here's my instrument. What I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to do a center point circle, and I'm just going to use for the origin, each of the 4 corners here. Let's 2 mil, it looks pretty good. So I'm going to create a 2 mil circle on each of these 4 corners. I'm going to do here again, 2 mil, and then here, 2 mil. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the lines from this circle, because I don't need that reference anymore. So select them one at a time and delete them. All right, so now we would have one other little thing. These little measurement lines, you can highlight those and delete those as well. They don't actually affect anything. Same goes for where it says the number 2. Don't need that. You can delete them just to kind of clean up your image. So now I have this. What I might want to do is select all of these, 2, 3, 4, and did I get that one? 4 and 5, and do a Control C, Control V, and I might want to, just like we did above, make another image of my or another copy of my instrument. And what I might want to do is select all of them. Actually, I'm sorry, hold on. Go to Sketch, choose Mirror. Now select all of them. Select all these objects. I'm going to select you. Oh, I think yep, I had missed that. Okay, and mirror line, and right here. And boom. So just like we did above, now I have a little bit of extra detail in terms of the screw. What I would end up doing here is extruding all of them, and I'm just going to do one instrument. I'm not going to do all of them for you here, but I would go ahead, right-click Extrude, make each one of them 1 millimeter tall. Take a look at our instrument here. I'm going to extrude this back in the other direction, -2, and actually that's going to go too far, -1.8. And there we go. And what I like to do for something like this is to select this little edge here at the top of each of these circles or cylinders, and I'm going to fillet it, and I'm going to slide this in until it looks like the head of a screw. Now, if you get really big and you really want to see the Phillips head indentation or whatever on top, you can actually import actual screws from other places from the web. If you're building something that big, good on you, man. That's a lot of detail. But for most of our stuff, this is going to get you a pretty good approximation of that instrument panel with those lines. It's just a technique that you can use. I hope you like it. All right, so we've seen how we can create a detailed instrument panel that looks really good with just a few techniques and a little bit of time. Nothing too complicated. You can actually take this technique though as far as you want. This is an instrument panel that I created a few years back. This is a T38 Talon instrument panel. It just uses the same techniques we've used. I added a couple bezels, a few extra knobs, and it really looks good in the model. Another instrument panel I've been working on more recently is this from a B17G. Now this is a little 3-piece panel that slots together with a bunch of other pieces to give you this. It is the panel with the center console where the throttle quadrants go. Eventually you're going to see this panel in the large-scale B17G that I'm working on. So that's about it for today. If you have questions about this technique, please let me know. I'm more than happy to help. You'll find the panel that we created today out on my Thingiverse page if you want to download it and print it for yourself. And until next time, I will see you around the internet.